Alright, so my research project was the DX conversion. And so let's just quickly take a look at this little um, diagram that I have. A lot of the conversion was not. This is the main architecture conversion that was done, I would say. A lot of the rest of it was tweaking a lot of the classes that we got from the graphics class to either extract more information or to work properly with the code that we have from Game Engine. So here in the NACL graphics class um, is all of the things that are required to set the graphics in motion. So we have the depth stencil view, the render target view, the swap chain, the main window, um, all the necessary functions to set those things up. So we have the initializations. We have this keeping track of time, the main update and the main draw. Um, all the things to run DX. And right here, um, without a defined association, we have a static singleton component of the NACL graphics, which is this graphics link. It is responsible for holding the device, the context, and these two rasterizer states that are needed to do the wireframe. Since we're not using the same rasterizer for every single rendered object, and then this just allows for, even though it's not smart, and I'm trying to get out of the habit of having things be globally available. This is um, globally available device context in these rasterizer states. Um, so yeah, that's the basic structure of that. And then the NACL engine, which was the game.cpp from Game 374, inherits directly from this. And this one is not really relevant here, but this one is set up as a singleton too. Um, and that's the main structure of the DX conversion was converting this class into something that can be used by the rest of the game, and then has this structure to make everything work. Over here, I just have the two graphics objects that I had to create and or alter the most. I'm still inheriting from the base, a wireframe class and a sprite class, but I will go through all of these as quickly and in as much detail as possible. Again, a lot of this was creating, not creating, but heavily adjusting um, the existing classes to meet our needs. And yeah, all that fun stuff. Let's start in the wonderful camera that took me much too long to figure out. Um, so in the camera, I've tried to make it as simple as possible on the user. All that they have to do when they create a camera is um, set in a type. Any given type that they put in will automatically take an enum type and set it up to just a default parameter. So we have a default perspective 3D and a perspective orthographic 2D. They can also a user can also set their own with set perspective and set orthographic, and that will set everything up correctly for them. I have our projection matrices, view matrix set up, and some basic camera uh, trans translations and manipulations, colors in there. Debug out was fun to do. Dealing with the ellipse is always fun. converting using this function was great. Sorry, I'm literally just rambling. Um, uh, I had to move over debug out, which is great. Moving up to texture, importing texture over, I had to extract more information from the TGA files than we did in the graphics class. So all that I had to do there was go into the Azul head. The Azul header? No, that's a different one. For this one, all I had to do was go into the texture metadata to get width and height, and I don't even know if there's a lot of other stuff I had to get from there. But doing that allowed me to just get a little bit more information about the textures, and with that, I could make an image class, which takes a texture and this rectangle, and with the texture and the rectangle, I was able to display just a portion of a texture using just a little bit of UV math. So with that, I have basically the same behavior as Azul's image system. And the images have their own manager, which is just a regular asset manager, which behaves like the rest of my asset managers. I'm going to do a lot of shader work. Oh, I did have to redo the way that the way that we left the shaders in the graphics class needed a lot of user attention to get them to work. So because I have that singleton graphics link, the shaders are able to do all of the work on their own. When we call render on a shader, where is it? Oh, that'll be in the graphics object. I don't even think I did much on these. Nope, shaders were pretty good. Model, I don't think I did much in the models. Added in the mesh separator so I can have multi-meshed objects. I did have to extract more data from the models like I did the textures, but this time I was able to use the Azul header, which is much easier to read than anything Microsoft has ever put out, documentation-wise. As well as I believe I had to add some things into the vertex stride. I don't even remember. Vertex stride. Am I in the right one? I'm in the right one. I don't know why that threw me for a loop. But yeah, we extracted the this extra data that was already hidden in the Azul file because we use those everywhere, especially in collision. And we have all of our pre-made models, the sphere and the skybox and that kind of stuff. The unit square for 2D was fun to have. Oh, well then while we're here, let's talk about a little bit more 2D stuff. So the unit square is very simple. It's just the 4 points, 4 vertices, 2 triangles, correctly wound. But since I'm preloading this model in the model manager, I am to allow for images to work correctly for 2D. I'm using the same model, but I am changing the UVs a few times per frame, which is probably not the best way to do it. If I could restart this, I would probably have multiple model. I would have a dedicated unit square model for each graphics object sprite. But if I jump into graphics object sprite now, we will see that when we do our render, we call special sprite function do not use, which um, forces the UVs in the model to be correct for that specific sprite. We render them, and then we reset them to just the 0, 1, 0, 1 for other sprites to use. And that requires a little bit more GPU traffic than I would like, but it was working, and I have a lot to do. So that is what I'm sticking with. We went through the models, great. I don't use main TXApp, we went through images. So the graphics objects I reworked to be completely self-sufficient, as I was talking about a little bit earlier. So what we can focus on here is this render call. When we call render, we just provide a camera, and that is it. The graphics object does literally everything else on its own. So we send it to the camera matrices from the camera are sent automatically. The graphics link provides all of the device and device context information that we need, and all that is taken care of. I'm sorry. By itself. So that took a little while to get going, but it works well. And then for something like the wireframe, all that we do is we put the entire we kick the rasterizer to the correct wireframe mode, render everything, and then kick the rasterizer back. I've chosen to do it this way because I don't render a lot of wireframe things unless I'm visualizing. So it makes sense to not have every other graphics object say, "Oh, kick it into solid mode" before we render. Instead, we just assume that the rasterizer is always in solid mode, and just for wireframe, we kick it into wireframe and then we kick it back at the end. So I can't be everything I've done. There's so many little tiny tweaks that I've had to do, especially when porting in the whole engine. I've had to alter basically every single file here to make it all work. I'll probably write about my process. Oh, I have a planning document. Game time update. Updating draw loops. Yes. I did the graphics objects rework. I did the model shader and texture objects. I moved everything onto there, and then around sprint 8 is when I very quickly began falling off of this timeline. So the things I missed are the things I was really excited for. I didn't get to do lighting, I didn't get to do instancing, and I gave myself a week for debugging. It's really hard to say what happened for me at the end of this quarter. I do have 3 very daunting projects that are on my plate right now. I know that everyone else has projects like this. And especially as I moved away from these things, which were really the easiest part of the engine, adjusting the existing graphics library that I had to fit the game engine that I had been working on was really a lot of adjusting and minimal architecting and coding from scratch. And then once I got down to writing the image class, figuring out how things were working under the hood in Azul, that took me a lot longer. I would highlight this texture part. And then as we got into terrain, these things started taking up more of my time, and other classes took up more of my time, and I just very quickly lost these goals. So I'm happy that I have the graphics library that works. I am sad that I don't have the extra things on my individual project. That is, in the most general terms, what didn't make it into the final deliverable. I am not. I'll put this into the um, wow, into the reflection reports. I'm not gonna just ramble about them for you, but that's what did not make it into the final deliverable and why. I don't think I'm gonna stop working on this engine. I think by the end of the summer I will have hopefully a more impressive engine for myself. But oh my gosh, that is what I have for this. Oh, I didn't address this. This is the biggest shame. Literally this morning, I went to go figure out why I was getting so many live objects, and I realized that Azul was kicking off the engine termination automatically, and my engine was not. And so most of today has not been working on the game or working on the engine. It has been just linking up all the destructors, and it has been such a burden. I don't know. I don't even know how I left this for the end. It was so dumb. Um, but my ref counts are through the roof. Um, I've been working on them for hours, and I really need to move on and polish my game up a little bit to make it respectable. So this is the greatest misfortune of the engine. I I just assumed that once I reorganized my graphics link, which was really what was taking care of all of what I assumed were the few things um, that needed to be cleaned up. Um, that this would just go down. I have no idea how it is that high, but it's not something I have time to trace down in the final moments of this project. So the ref counts are where they are. It makes me really mad that I allowed that to happen. But that is the single biggest problem with this engine. So yeah, on that happy, lovely note, that is the end of this, and then my last video will be for the game.